Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm joined by Zach Blackburn. Yet again, if you listen to the podcast for a little while, Zach, you know that he's our director of SEO and always comes on here to drop some cool truth bombs about what we can do to get better organic results, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. How you been?
Good. I'm excited to jump into this topic. So this topic, let's talk about where it came from. This actually came from a Facebook post where somebody said, hey, I've been working with my SEO company for several years and we just haven't gotten any SEO results. They say that the problem is because I'm sending my PPC traffic to its own page and not using it to lift the SEO presence. How should I do that? Don't you want to have tracking on the pages? How do I also track things and then also send it to the main page of the website in order to get this SEO benefit, right? So that's what spurred this conversation. And you and I talked about this some and came to the conclusion that there's a balance of variables here. And the reality is what we want is to track things really well. And we also don't want to screw things up from an SEO standpoint. And there's a lot of myths surrounding this, but we have a process that we've been following consistently for a while. This has been at least 3 or 4 years that we've done this for all our clients as a company. And I feel, the best middle ground that allows you to have the best of both worlds. So I'm excited to talk about like those things in particular. But sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to say it. It was good.
So let's just talk about like the premise of that post first. Does it make a difference? I've heard this pop up over and over again. And honestly, there are people on both sides that have opinions on this, right? So this is me asking for your opinion and why you feel that your opinion is right and how confident or not confident you are in your opinion about the idea of sending PPC traffic to a dedicated landing page versus your main website. Some people make the argument that if you send your PPC traffic to your main website, it's going to increase your SEO rankings. Other people say there's no evidence that's true.
Actually, it is very interesting. Not only is there not any evidence to that, Google has specifically stated that there is no correlation between the two. So I'm in the boat that your PPC and SEO are very separated. They play nice together, but in a very different way. From your PPC will not boost your SEO, but they play nice in other areas. And we could talk about that. That may be a different podcast completely. But as far as the actual results themselves, there is no lift that it gives. And in my view of this, we actually have seen better results with a dedicated landing page that is not part of the root domain. So incorporating some subdomain or some variation thereof that allows you to tailor your message from a paid perspective. Where SEO, if you were to incorporate your paid campaign towards a SEO page, they're fighting against each other actually, because they are coming at it from different angles. Where SEO is a very holistic approach, where PPC is a very targeted pinpoint down to the keywords and the campaign and the messaging. And that's where a lot of that comes in. So that is my absolute opinion dedicated to this, that there is no evidence, and Google has said to that exact, that there is no actual correlation.
Yeah, to echo some of what you're saying and add some of my own thoughts. We've tried sending traffic to homepages of websites for PPC and just haven't tried to make it. Not that we haven't tried, we haven't been able to make it work as well as we can with the dedicated landing page. I think the reality that's a little bit tough is many of the things that you need to do to have a good SEO campaign actually can work against you for your PPC campaign. Like you said, having more generalized pages about a bunch of different things, having a lot of content. Like the average PPC landing page probably has a couple hundred words of content on it. The average SEO page, maybe at least 1,000, sometimes multiple thousands. And look, do we put 2,000 words of content on a page because people love reading 2,000 words of content about one thing? No, we do it because that's the only way to rank in search engines. And if we didn't have to do it, we wouldn't do it. But for PPC, you don't have to do it. So it's interesting And then other aspects like SEO has like internal linking is a really big part of SEO. You should be able to get from that page to all the other pages. And PPC, you don't want that. You want them to just convert or leave. You don't want them to be browsing all around your website and distracted. So there's some reasons to believe that driving PPC traffic to your main website is not a good idea. You want to drive it to a dedicated landing page. The only argument against that is, what if it helps your SEO? And you heard it from Zach. Zach's a person I trust a ton, and not just this industry, but in SEO in general. And he says it doesn't matter. Now, let me give you one counter argument to that. That's not exactly a counter argument. One thing that was released in Google's recent algorithm update, their algorithm leak, was that someone said, actually, the number of people searching for your brand name on Google is a ranking signal for how well you rank for the other keywords that you have that you're trying to target organically. So in that way, if you think about it, technically, it could be true that if you ran some PPC and it generated a little bit of branded search on your behalf, that could actually lift your SEO rankings. But the important thing to recognize here is that's no more true about PPC than it is about literally any other marketing channel that has your company name on it. And in fact, it's actually much more true about some other specific channels than it is about PPC. One great example of this is TV advertising. TV advertising inevitably produces a gigantic number of people searching on Google for your company, because not everybody's going to remember your website. They're not going to remember the phone number that was in the ad. It's just a quick ad that comes and goes. They can't click on it. So they're going to go to Google and search for your company name. And that's an example of other marketing channels actually supporting SEO, and how it can be true that the more marketing you're doing in general, the better your SEO performs. And that's technically true for PPC too. If you run a bunch of PPC, you're going to have more people searching for you because of it. But that's just marketing helping SEO. That's not like PPC helping SEO. There's no conspiracy here about Google like has technically organic results, but they give them all to the people who pay the money or anything like that. So a lot of people think there is. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I actually have a few, and I love that you called that out, because where I was saying earlier, the playing nice together, it isn't just SEO and PPC. All of your marketing channels play so well together. Your radio, your billboard, your mailers, and all of the other channels out there play so well together. The way I've always said it is that they're siblings that are actually nice with each other, and they work so well. So it is something that the natural branded search, absolutely. And you can influence that through a variety of other mediums, where SEO and paid, you have to, there's so much more that goes into it, where a TV ad or a radio ad or a mailer, then people are actually getting it. And you know that shotgun marketing is actually working because they are searching for your brand. Where SEO is a little more holistic, and we want to focus on keyword buckets and keyword clouds to try to bring in the widest net, where paid wants to focus on those very few specific seller related terms. So it all encompasses through there.
Yeah. One other note that I would add, if you're listening to this and you're wondering what things could you be doing that are making these channels not work together in just ways that you didn't expect, I can call out two specific things that I've seen a lot in the industry that you want to be a little bit careful about. One of them is non-branded direct mail. A lot of people like to send direct mail, but they're a little afraid of the people who are going to be upset about it and try to go leave a negative review for their business. So they just brand it as someone different. And the consequence of that is you don't actually generate branded search for your business. Now, also getting a bunch of negative reviews is bad. We all know there's some types of direct mail campaigns you can run that seem to take people off a little more than others types of direct mail campaigns you can run. This is just one factor to consider. The other thing is there's a certain TV advertising company in the space that shall not be named, but has convinced everybody to launch a completely different brand for their TV marketing when they do it. So now there's all these companies in the space that have like their brand for TV, and then they got their brand for everything else. And it's just wild because they could support their SEO so much more by having that brand for their TV be the same thing as their brand for everything else. If you have two brands, like this is like a clear reason. Now everybody knows kind of fluffy reasons. Oh, more brand presence, recognition, all that kind of stuff if it's all kind of aggregated together. But you have to think just how that could impact your seller. It's really important from an organic standpoint. And if you have a lot more people that would know your brand and are searching for your brand, it's going to make a difference. So that's a big con associated with having a separate brand for something like TV advertising that a lot of people just don't realize even exists.
I fully agree. And one thing that you have to understand, your brand is your name online. The way I've always equated it is that like your website is like the suit and tie version of yourself, your company, and you want that to be presented in the best possible light. And when someone does search for you, they want to find you. If they are working with Zach and that's the REI specialist that sent them the mailer and they're excited because they're in a situation that they need to sell, then they want to work with you and they don't want to get these random names that are coming up where you're under the DBA and you have all these weird scenarios going on. Like that's a way to lose trust with those people.
Yeah, real estate investors are like the kings and queens of too many DBAs. So it's good advice, Zach. So let's drill down a little bit on the main topic of this episode. So that's the conversation that sparked it. And what came from it was me sharing this process that we use and a number of people telling me that I'm not doing that. I didn't realize that was important to do. Because let's talk about what happens if you don't do this yet. We're going to get to, as soon as we talk about the dilemma, we're going to start talking about the 7-step process. We'll give you exactly 7 things that you need to do in order to optimize this. But people generally go one of 2 ways. The first way that they go is they just don't track nearly enough. Yeah. What's the problem if you don't track enough stuff? You don't know what's working. I don't think I have to actually convince anybody here that tracking as much stuff as possible is like a really important thing. So that's problem number 1 that people do. If you just follow what your SEO company tells you or something, you might not actually end up tracking a lot of stuff. The other flip side of this is that in the process of trying to track too much, you actually hurt your results. So instead of ending up with $1 million in revenue where you know where every dollar came from, you end up with $600,000 in revenue where instead of ending up with $1 million in revenue where you don't know where the revenue came from, you end up with 600,000 where you've tracked everything down to the penny. You don't want that either. What we ultimately care about is it being most. We only care about the tracking to the extent that it helps us get to the end place. But let's just talk about it. People aren't familiar with this because I'm sure somebody's thinking, how can tracking too much actually hurt me? And there's actual real ways it can hurt you. Zach, if you wouldn't mind expanding on some of the ways that trying to track too much stuff can actually negatively impact an SEO campaign.
Yes. So a few things that when you're looking at a paid campaign, probably not paid campaigns or SEO, is that some of the items that you're looking at in most circumstances that I've seen, you have all of this data points, but you only end up looking at 1 or 2 metrics. And you say, these are the only 1 or 2 that matter. And we all know what they are. The deal, and then typically like some level of a click or an impression, something like that. But there's so much more that plays a factor when it comes to SEO, which is the growth, the average position of your keywords, looking at realistically, your competitors, where are they at? Where are you at? Where were you missing the mark where your competitors are really getting there? A few other pieces that I've seen that people miss is how long someone stays on the website. This is a big metric that gets looked over so much. Is everyone looks at it and says, I don't even know what this means, let alone why do I care about this? The crux of what the metric of someone staying on your website and engaging with your copy and your content and your website is really saying they're finding that interesting. So if you're spending where paid is a different number, and we'll talk about that in just 1 second, but from an organic perspective, 1.5, like 1 to 1.5 minutes is industry standard. That's very common how long someone stays on the website. But if you're at a 30-second, your copy is not engaging, your content, your website is not performing what it should be, and you're not actually providing the actual results that you should be. So that's one metric. And then on the paid side of that, just to clarify, you're looking at like 15 to 30 seconds approximately. So it's a very different metric from SEO versus paid, because paid wants people to get in and out quick, where SEO wants that conversation to get to understand the process and understand where you're going. So those are a few metrics that I believe we either overlook at or underlook at in those regards.
And let's talk about, so yeah, I hear you on that in terms of tracking, how it impacts it. Let's talk about another thing that people do where they try to over track some of the metrics, and in the process, they mess up their NAP consistency across Google. This is one of the biggest things we see for investors. Investors want to create a different phone number for everything imaginable. And we understand where it comes from. We want to track. We want those metrics. But how can that actually hurt you in SEO?
Yes. So Google looks at something for your Google business profile. It looks for something called your NAP, name, address, phone number. And there's a consistency. The way I've always explained it, it's a gigantic bingo card of online sources that are out there. So a few of them, Yellow Pages is a business citation location. Another one would be like Yelp and Facebook and your website and your Google business profile. And there's about 15 to 20 of them that are the top dogs. And then there are about 60 to 80. Another one would be Apple Maps. Sorry, that's a really big one. But there's about 60 to 80 of them that are out there that Google and Bing and other sources actually utilize. So one of those is your actual phone number. So if you have a tracking phone number on your website, or pardon me, not a tracking number on your website, but you do for your business profile, your mailer, your paid ads, and all of this other marketing channels, those are inconsistencies throughout that process. So that is something that Google looks at that bingo card and says, does name, address, and phone number, are they consistent? And they go, no, not here. Oh, no, not here again. Oh, no, not here. So this business profile is not as authoritative and not as trustworthy. 3 down to page 2 or 3 in the results, which anything past page 1 is you're in no man's land. You might as well be in Sahara Desert. So that is something that is really important to make sure not only that you're doing it right, but that you are not losing that consistency in your business profile. We all know Google Business Profile is one of the biggest values and one of the biggest lead generations from an organic perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to paint a quick picture for everybody here, how do you mess this up? It's as simple as you put a tracking phone number on your website, or you put a tracking number on your Google business profile, and you do it the wrong way. That can seriously mess us up. It feels like an innocent thing. You're just thinking, oh, I want to know which phone calls are coming from my website, and I want to know which ones are coming from my Google business profile. And you're right in wanting to know those things. But if you just go throwing tracking numbers out there, then you're going to screw up Google's map algorithm. And that's going to make it so that Google doesn't trust you quite as much. So we're going to talk about the best ways to do this kind of stuff, because as I'm saying this, you're probably thinking, this guy's advocating for me to not track anything. And no, that's actually not. So remember, we talked about 2 sides of the scale. Side 1 is you're not tracking anything. Side 2 is you're tracking it so much that you're actually hurting it. We just described both sides. We're going to describe the middle ground, which is basically how much can you possibly track without causing problems? And that's where the 7-step process comes in. So we're just going to jump through it step by step. Zach, I'll mention the step, and I'd love for you to comment a little bit on those particular things and why they're important. And let's just jump through each one of these. So step number 1, you want a separate landing page for marketing channels that is not indexed in Google. This could be a separate PPC landing page if you're running PPC in SEO. If you're running TV, it could be a separate TV landing page. Radio should have a radio landing page. Whatever the case is, you should have a landing page associated with that channel. That allows you to have leads that are tracked separately from that channel that go through that landing page. And then the key part here is you have to make sure they are not indexed with Google. How do you do that, and why is it important?
Yes. So how you do it is in your web builder, you can build a dedicated page. So let's use WordPress, most commonly used platform on the earth, is that you're able to build an individual page that is non-indexed. My preferred method, and what we actually use at Bateman Collective, is using sub-level of an unbounced subdomain page, which allows you to build its own environment. So if hypothetically you needed to build a multi-page landing page, which there are some circumstances where that's valuable, but generally speaking, it's its own entity and kept and defined by itself, because you are not giving people the opportunity to go other places. So it's only in that one kind of confined atmosphere itself. The second piece to this is realistically the tracking metrics of this. I want to call out one thing that is so important when you're building out a separate landing page. make sure that you are tailoring your messaging towards that avenue. So a prime example, I get this question all the time. They're doing SEO with us and they come in and they say, Zach, I am doing a TV ad here in 3 weeks, a month, whatever it is, and I want to know exactly what's coming in, but I'm telling them to go to the homepage. Okay, that's not a good scenario. You're not going to be able to understand all the results that are coming from that TV ad. You're not able to understand how many of those actually converted. So you don't understand the metrics that TV ad provided. So you can then create a better ad in the future. That's where a separate landing page would also come into play on that end. So it's not just a PPC play, but also from a TV as well. So making sure that you're doing this. The next piece is why essentially the importance of this is that you control it. You control every aspect of that page. And it will not hurt your other marketing efforts. If you go into your homepage and you're doing a TV ad or even a paid ad, and you need to change some messaging because of the ad itself, you just immediately cut out 6 months, a year's worth of SEO work that now is all lost. So please make sure you're using non-indexed landing pages.
Yeah, I'm going to point out a couple other reasons that this is a good idea. One is you can make that landing page for TV or for PPC and actually have it accidentally found on Google search results when somebody's looking for you organically for whatever reason. Why is it important to make it not indexed? You want to make sure there's no way to get there through a search engine. So you're specifically telling Google, hey, when you're looking at my online presence, ignore this thing. The other reason that's important is remember this NAP consistency thing that we talked about. So now if you have your own landing page for PPC or TV or with direct mail or whatever it is, and that's not indexed, it's actually not going to influence your NAP consistency, which means you now have the ability to put tracking numbers on it. So can you use tracking phone numbers and stuff like that for all these different channels pretty easily? You totally can. You just want to make sure it's separated. So Google's not viewing it as a hit on your reputation because there's inconsistency in those tracking numbers. So you can totally do all that stuff. You just got to make sure it's separated and not indexed by Google. Any other thoughts on that, Zach, before we go to number 2?
No, I think that you hit the right on the head.
Perfect. So number 2 is on that landing page, use a software like Call Tracking Metrics that allows you to granularly track phone calls by things like individual keywords. Let's talk about that. How does Call Tracking Metrics work? Because I can tell you the way that 95% of investors do this is they're like, I just need a tracking number to know what comes from PPC or something like that. And what they end up with is they know I spent this much money on PPC and I got this out of it. And that's real neat, except for the fact that you don't have the ability to optimize. You don't have the ability to go deeper to understand what aspects of my campaign are impacting performance. So there are technologies we can use. I encourage you to tell us all about Call Tracking Metrics and how we can actually track things more granularly.
Yeah, so Call Tracking Metrics is actually one of my favorite tools to utilize regarding individual phone numbers. So not only it gives you all the basic stuff that almost every call tracking system utilizes, where you're able to listen to the phone call, you're able to allocate it towards a specific channel, you're able to add some text message options so that everything is consistent. But one of the things that Call Tracking Metrics really utilizes is the dynamic shift in the phone number. So you are able to utilize call tracking numbers on your page, on your homepage, on your website, without it actually affecting your net consistency, because it only shows up when the lead comes in through the channel that you associated it with. Prime example, you associate a number towards your organic leads. Through Call Tracking Metrics, you add a dynamic number piece of code on your website. So if someone comes in through the organic channel, while the website is loading, the phone number changes. And no one sees it. Google plays very nice with this. Users play very nice with this. Systems and software play very nice with this. And you're getting that actual attribution through those channels. So a prime example, another one, a TV ad. You do a TV specific phone number, and if they come through that specific channel, boom, that you know for a fact they came through from that actual channel. And there's no way that they would be able to find that number unless you specifically gave them that phone number. So that is the most beautiful part of call tracking metrics. And the biggest part of this is you are able to do this on a paid campaign level as well, where you could break it out and say, this campaign will get this phone number and this campaign will get this phone number. Hypothetically, if you were to do multiple campaigns, a prime example, we use one for Facebook and one for paid ads. So you're able to delineate between those, even though they are both paid campaigns. Does that make sense? So just making that you get that granular data without hurting your organic results that is already in there.
Yeah, and the really cool thing with paid is it's much about paid campaign tracking. You can't pull everything that you want to pull out of Google. So instead, what you have to use, you have to put all of your data into Google. And the only way to map your data to Google is to get something called a GCLID. GCLID stands for Google Click ID, and it's a unique code associated with every single click that comes from Google. So when I talk about granularity of tracking, what I'm basically talking about is that call tracking metrics essentially has a pool of numbers that it's using, each of them assigned to a different person who's on your PPC landing page at any given time. And it knows if it gets a phone call from one of those, it understands who it was. And it's able to actually even report data back to the ad platform. So we can see specifically what's generating phone calls, not just, oh, we got a phone call from PPC, but we know what device was that person on. We know exactly what term they searched in Google. We know exactly was that the person that ended up converting down funnel in our CRM. We know which ad they clicked on, which version of the landing page they had. All this stuff that's really important, right? So if you want to be able to optimize, I feel like that's really important. A lot of people think of call tracking in terms of a really static way, but let's talk about this on two levels, because that's the value of it for just a PPC landing page compared to just having a normal tracking number there. You get way more granular. But even on your main website, listen to what Zach said here. So if you're one of those people, you want to track what's coming from your main website, but you don't want to mess with your SEO, mess with the nav consistency, you can use call tracking metrics to dynamically show a tracking number to somebody when they came from organic search, for example, but then not show that tracking number to, for example, a Google bot that's just crawling your website just to see what phone number's on there for nav consistency. So you see what we're doing here? We're basically making it so that where it counts, you have a tracking number, and when you don't want that, you don't have a tracking number. It's the absolute best way to play by all the SEO rules and at the same time get really granular tracking. And it's so much better by either having or not having a tracking number.
And the best thing about this is all within Google guidelines too. So it's not against the rules. Google encourages this. Google wants you to be able to track your stuff. There's just a proper process to follow. And that's where these 7 steps are coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. The step 3 we just talked about a little bit. It says on your main website, have a main business phone number, the one that you want to use for a phone number consistently across the internet. So let's talk about some factors with this. Now, some people ask, can that be a tracking phone number? It can, as long as that's like, according to the internet, that's your main phone number for your business and you use it forever. Yeah, forever. So what you want to be really careful of is having that be some tracking number in some software that you won't be able to get out of if you ever moved away from that software or something like that, because changing it is really hard. Not that it can't be done, but you're going to have to pay somebody to go across 80 different directories, some of which are really difficult to update, and figure out a way to update the phone number across everywhere. And there's no guarantee that won't negatively impact you some way or another. So all things equal, you really just want to pick one phone number that's going to be your consistent business phone number on the internet. And you want it to be as consistent as possible. And that's going to be the phone number that you want to put on your main website. And can you have call tracking metrics mask over that with a different tracking number for different traffic from different sources? Absolutely. But there has to be one phone number that's there and it's stable. Any other thoughts on that, Zach?
Do just a little additive to it is that there's a lot of issues that people run into with their Google business profile. I know that's a point in our number here, but I just want to clarify is that there's tons of ways to be able to have multiple tracking numbers, even on the same website, hypothetically, and it work dynamically and it works so beautifully. So make sure that you're taking the time to find that primary number that you want everywhere. And then you can get the tracking supplemented.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the next the next point, we jumped into this when we talked about call tracking metrics. Use the software like call tracking metrics to mask a different number over that number when traffic comes from a different source. Prime example of this, you have call tracking metrics, put a particular tracking number there if they came from organic SEO. So you can separate just what's coming from SEO versus just traffic on your website, which are two different things. And a lot of people don't realize they're different things. So that one, we've already talked about that. The next one is a little bit different. In your Google business profile, use your main business phone number as a secondary number. This tells Google that the number is relevant to you, but doesn't display it. And then additionally, use a specific Google business profile tracking phone number as your primary number. So let's talk about this, Zach, because everybody wants to know, what are the calls I'm getting from my website? What are the calls I'm getting from my Google business profile? It's no fun to just have the same business phone number that has to be everywhere and not know where those calls are coming from. So you can't understand things like, oh no, my calls from SEO dropped by 50% this month, and understand it mostly came from the business profile and understand there's a problem there, right? So we need to be able to get those analytics. But how do we do that with the fact that Google's making us put the same phone number literally everywhere?
Yeah, honestly, this is the most beautiful part of it. And we call it out right there, is that you're still able to play within the rules of the sandbox and still be able to track the information that you need by making sure you're utilizing the dynamic phone numbers on your website, overlaying your primary phone number, and then the same tracking number, or a different one if that's what you would like, a different tracking number as the primary in your Google business profile, but the secondary is still that solid number that you know is consistent across the entire board, that's going to be there forever, regardless of the tracking number itself. So do not think that these systems are not sophisticated enough to understand that tracking phone numbers is a thing in our day and age. This is something that is very commonplace. We are not the only industry that utilizes this. There is so many industries that follow these very similar practices and have seen wide success and have seen it for the long term as well. So it isn't just that quick fix. It's, I know this for years and it's working very well.
Yeah, this is a simple thing that makes or breaks your Google business profile. So we're saying put a tracking number on your Google business profile so you know what comes from it. We're just saying also add a secondary phone number that's that main business phone number that never changes. And what Google will do is they will look and they'll say, oh, actually consistent across the entire internet is this other phone number. And that phone number is also on the Google business listing. We just also have a primary tracking number. So if you do it just like that, then every person who calls, they're just going to call the primary number. Often it's the only one that shows up, but you're still communicating to Google that the other one's important. So that's the best way to track your Google business profile. So you'll notice as we think about this, are you able to track what's happening from ads? Yes. Are you able to track what's happening on your website from different channels? Yes. Are you able to track what's coming from Google business profile? Yes. You can do all of those things. It's just how you do it. The next one. Oh, yeah, we just went over this. For the primary number on the Google business profile, put a Google business profile tracking number. And then the final one, use your main business number on all other sites. You should have citations in 50 plus places. So here's the tricky thing. This whole deal that you can put in a primary number, that's a tracking number, and then you can put in a secondary number that is your main number. That's not a thing most places. That's a Google business profile specific thing. So when we talked about how you're never going to be able to track literally everything that you want to track and still have great SEO results, this is what we're talking about. Now, of your traffic that's going to come directly from your business citations, greater than 90% of it is going to come from your Google business profile. So can you track the vast majority? Yes, you can. But for that other 10%, and you're putting that phone number on Apple Maps and on Facebook and on those 80 other small places that aren't quite as important. A lot of people want to put different tracking numbers out there for those things, and it will just kill your name, address, phone number consistency. So this is one where with SEO, you just have to take it in the teeth from a tracking standpoint and say, I'm not going to be able to track exactly how people found that main business phone number that's across all those different sites, but you just have to make it consistent and be okay with the fact that you're going to track 90% of it. And any other thoughts on that? Just putting the main business phone number and all the other citations?
The way that I've always viewed this and the way that I've worked with my clients is that we have those 4 or 5 different tracking numbers, and then we have the main number, and we know where that main number is 90% of the time. we've always just associated that with those few anomaly sites and say, I did get 3 or 4 or 5 from towards my main phone number. Most of them came through Google Business Profile. So I know that those were probably those additional sites. And there has to be some like logical understanding and hypothesis towards, hey, that there still is some tracking here. We just don't know exactly which one it is. And most of these sites are just for Google. Most of them are just for that consistency. Some of them are actually used, like Yelp. Yelp is a very common one that's used, but it doesn't give us that level of tracking that Google Business Profile will.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that I wish was a little different, but it is what it is. And honestly, like I said, you're going to track over 90%. And Zach said the other 10%, you're going to know where it came from because it was just one of those few places that you couldn't track really. Now, I can tell you in the real estate investing business, those other citations generate practically nothing. So you're not really missing out on much. Like Zach said, this is literally, you're putting those citations out there, not because they're going to generate traffic for you. You're putting them out there so that Google's algorithm can see that they are out there and believe that you're a trusted, reputable company because you're in a lot of places. That's literally the only reason you're going to do that. It's not because we get a lot of deals from having our information out on a lot of these obscure websites. So that's a time where you just play nice with the algorithm and realize it's possible nobody's ever even going to see that phone number on that website. And that's okay. It'll just be a robot that's going to see it, and that robot's going to get you better SEO rankings. So there's nothing to complain about there. Right. So there you have it. That's the basic, simple process to do this. So what I would encourage you to do is go through this list of these 7 things and see what are you doing, what are you not doing. There's probably opportunities where you could be tracking more granularly, so you can have better insights where you're just not tracking granularly enough. And there's also places where maybe you're trying to track and it's actually causing NAP consistency issues. You want to avoid those as well. This is the single best balance between those things that we found. And I think you'll find it's pretty standard across a lot of great agencies across a lot of industries to do things somewhat similarly to this. And Google's very used to it. Any closing words, Zach, before we wrap this up?
One thing I would always recommend is that make sure that you're looking at the longevity of the results that you're getting, because just like with any sales jobs, you always have to have a pipeline. And the way that we build that pipeline is through Google Business Profile, proper tracking, and then adjustments to the strategy that you're building out. So that is something I would just like as closing thoughts. Make sure you understand that there's a pipeline being built with this.
Yeah, one thing I would encourage too as we close up here. Today, we talked about a lot of things that you could do to accidentally sabotage your SEO results. We did not talk about any of the things that you need to do to actually get good SEO results, which if you don't do any of those things, there's not going to be really anything to sabotage. So, so it doesn't really matter as much. So we do, if you haven't heard it, we have a separate series called, I think we called it SEO Masterclass or something like that. It's 5-part series that includes one episode diving into each like niche specific topic about SEO, as well as an overview. I encourage you to look at that. In that episode series, we go over all the specific things that we're doing behind the curtain in SEO campaigns to help make the results great. I could tell you the number one complaint in the industry overall, when we talk to investors and they come to us and they're saying, I don't know. They're saying, why did I leave somewhere else to come to you? Or what is the pain point that I'm experiencing? The number one term we hear is that SEO is like a black box. They just don't understand what goes into it. And hiring an SEO company literally feels just like writing a check every month and just throwing it into the mailbox and just having no idea where it actually goes, and if anybody uses it, what even happens. And we strive to make it as transparent as we can. These episodes about like this one about tracking and also the SEO Masterclass series are basically our efforts to do as much as we can to make it clear how this stuff works and what exactly we are doing. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And if you just want to hire somebody to do it all for you, then congratulations, you're like 95% of real estate investors. And you're probably on the better 95% if I had to say something, because it's absolutely not something worth doing yourself. If you ask me, reach out to us and go to batemancollective.com, schedule a consult. If you have an SEO campaign that you're running, you just might have Zach himself reviewing your SEO campaign and helping to build the next steps to get rankings over this next year. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode, and I will see you next week.
Thank you.